down through many generations to maintain our old tradition. The story starts with Queen Maeve of Connacht in the west of Ireland. Queen Maeve was very beautiful, and as she came into her prime, she married a rich chieftain from Leinster called Ailill. And the marriage went well at first, until one day they were out walking, and Ailill remarked how happy Maeve looked. And Maeve said, "Well, I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be happy?" And then Ailill put his foot in it. He said, "Well, Maeve, you should be happy, because you're married to the richest person in Ireland." Right, Queen Maeve was very beautiful, but her beauty was matched by only one thing, and that was her pride. And she thought she was the richest person in Ireland. So they got into an argument. And by the end of it, they agreed that the next day, they were going to compare all their wealth to see who was richer. So the next day, that's what they did. They ordered the servants to gather up all their gold and silver, all their valuable vases, their precious ornaments, all the deeds to all their lands, and they made two great piles before them. Yet, when they counted it all up, they were equal. So they said, "We shall call in our herds." They called in all their sheep, they counted each and every one, but they were equal. Next, they called in the horses, they counted each horse that they had, but they were equal. Finally, they called in their cattle, the most important, and when they counted up all the cattle, they found that they were not equal. Ailill had one thing that Maeve did not, a magnificent white stud bull by the name of Finbannock, and people travelled from all over Ireland with their milk cows to avail of his powers. Alright, his powers. So Maeve had to admit that Ailill was in fact richer. But was she going to let this lie? No, she wasn't. Because she knew that there was one bull in Ireland that might be able to match Finbannock, and that was the brown bull of Cooley in Ulster. So she turned to Ailill and she said, "That brown bull is in Cooley, but he will be mine, and my legend will grow, and my glory will shine." So the owner of the brown bull was a Celtic chieftain by the name of Dara MacFiacna. So Maeve sent a messenger up to Dara with a very generous offer. The offer was 50 milk cows, the finest plot of land in Connacht, and a golden chariot simply for the lend of the bull for 1 year. Dara received the offer and he agreed. It was a good offer. And he threw a feast to celebrate. And he was drinking with the messenger. And they kept drinking late into the night. Now what happens when people drink late into the night? They start saying stupid stuff, don't they? So eventually, the messenger said to Dara, "Well, Dara, it's lucky you agreed to give Maeve the bull, because if you had said no, she would have come and taken her by force anyway, do you know what I mean?" You can't say that to a proud Celtic chieftain. Dara MacFiacna changed his mind immediately. He sent that messenger back to Maeve with the message that the bull was staying where it was. So what did Maeve do? Maeve beat and pounded upon the drums of war. She called up all the finest men in Connacht and a master on the border of Ulster ready to strike into Cooley. And she was especially confident of victory because the Red Branch Knights, the defenders of Ulster, were struck down by a curse called the Pangs of Ulster. And the Pangs of Ulster cursed them to be stricken by the pains of female labour for 5 days every year. And this was because an old chieftain of Ulster had forced the goddess Maha to take part in a chariot race when she was heavily pregnant. And she had experienced so much pain during this race that she cursed the fully grown warriors of Ulster to feel the same pain that she had for 5 days every year. And so Ulster was defenceless. Yet the night before she was due to invade, Maeve was visited by a druid. And the druid had some very worrying tidings. The druid informed her that there was one warrior in Ulster not affected by the pangs of Ulster. And his name was Cuchulainn. And Cuchulainn was not affected because he was still 1 year short of being a fully mature man. Yet stories of his prowess in war had already spread up and down the island. Maeve was deeply troubled at this news. She, like all the leaders of the time, placed great weight upon the words of the druids. But she weighed up her options and she decided that there was no way that one man could stand against her army of thousands. That night, on the other side of the plains, on a hillside, Cuchulainn sat there. And as he watched the dark smoke drift up into the red sunset, he spoke to himself with a quiet intensity, and he said, "Let them come. Let them break like water on rock. I will dash them, smash them like some desperate fleet. Their courage will rise, but I will crush them all, and at my feet their lifeless bodies will fall." The next day, they marched to the border, And Cuchulainn was standing there strong and fearless, ready to face Queen Maeve's entire army. Having patiently perfected his discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal himself, he stood there proud, in full confidence of victory. Yet he was also smart. He knew he could not take them all on at the same time, and so he invoked the sacred right of single combat to face each of them individually. And so, one by one, the finest warriors in Maeve's army came, and one by one they fell to Cuchulainn's blade, and the stream beside the battlefield ran red with their blood. After 300 men had passed into the spirit world by his hand, Maeve sent an offer of great riches to Cuchulainn for him to stand down. Cuchulainn refused. Yet all the while he was fighting, he knew that there was one warrior in Connacht that might be able to match him. For years previously, he had trained in Scotland under a martial trainer called Scott. There he had trained alongside a young warrior from Connacht called Ferdia. They had lived together, ran together, sparred together. They had become as foster brothers. And Cuchulainn knew that Ferdia may be able to match him. Yet Ferdia had not answered Maeve's call to war. He didn't want to fight Cuchulainn. She sent another messenger. He sent that messenger away as well. And so, Maeve started to spread rumours that Ferdia was in fact a coward and afraid to face Cuchulainn. Celtic pride again, this brought him out, but only to publicly rebuke Maeve for her lies. Yet when he arrived at the camp, she was holding a feast. And when she saw him, she said, "Sit, Ferdia, drink." And sit and drink he did. And all the while, Maeve noticed that Ferdia could not take his eyes off her daughter that was sitting beside her. And she saw her chance. And she said, "Ferdia, if you kill Cuchulainn, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage." And Ferdia, drunk on alcohol, or even drunker on love, agreed. The next day, he marched out to face Cuchulainn. And at first, Cuchulainn tried to reason with him, but he quickly saw that there was no use. And so they began to fight. And this was the greatest battle in Irish folklore. They fought for 3 whole days. They fought with sword, they fought with shield, they fought with spear, they fought with javelin. And though each wounded the other, neither man seemed to be affected. Now this was a heroic battle, but there was nothing beautiful about it. This was bloody. This was brutal, as 2 men who had once been as brothers hacked and clawed at each other in a desperate attempt to achieve victory. Yet, at the end of each day, each sent aid to the other. Cuchulainn sent Ferdia herbs for his wounds, and Ferdia sent Cuchulainn food and drink. On the 4th day, Cuchulainn began to tire, for he had been fighting for so long previously. And Ferdia landed a deep blow with his spear into Cuchulainn's side, and it looked like the end was near. But Cuchulainn still had one more move to make. For that martial trainer Scott had taught him, and him alone, due to his god blood, how to summon the Guy Bullock. And the Guy Bullock was an ancient spear made from the bones of sea monsters that rested deep at the bottom of the Irish Sea. Cuchulainn raised his bloody hand, and he summoned the Guy Bullock. It rolled from the waves and soared through the wind and rain lashed air, and landed directly in his hand. And upon landing, he hurled it with all his might at Ferdia. The Guy Bullock cut through Ferdia's armour like a shark through the open water. It sliced seamlessly through the flesh, muscle and bone of his chest and pierced him deep in the heart. Ferdia fell, first to his knees, desperately trying to utter a final word to his friend before he collapsed to his side, dead. Cuchulainn was exhausted, and he retreated into a cave to recover. And seeing her chance, Maeve rushed into the Ulster, and she seized the brown bull. And they dragged it back to Connacht, and as they were trying to drag it into its pen, the brown bull was bellowing so loudly that Fimbulnach heard the bellows, and he rushed forward to defend his territory. And upon seeing Fimbulnach, the brown bull broke free from his captors, and he rushed to meet Fimbulnach's challenge, and they began to fight. And they fought for a whole day and a whole night, and the clash of their horns could be heard from all around Ireland. The next day, the people of Ireland awoke to find that the brown bull of Cooley had killed Fimbulnach, and he paraded around Connacht with the remains of the white bull on his horns before he returned to Cooley. Yet the brown bull had also been badly wounded in this fight, and he died soon after of his wounds. And all that was left behind was a land ravaged by the pride and the wrath of Queen Maeve. That's it. Thank you.
You! Oh, Sean!